Greetings and salutations, my fellow sovereigns. This is the Wednesday night Vocational Science of Freedom Open Roundtable. And tonight we are going to be having discussions about ex-parte wins, meaning that you win, but you didn't even go to court. So Viper and a few other people are going to be telling stories tonight about particularly traffic cases. And we'll be sharing some information that we shared in a previous class on the Vocational Science of Freedom Travel Binder folder class, which I will give a link to in chat. And if you'd like to join the Vocational Science of Freedom Gilded server, you can do so by going to the Vocational Science of Freedom YouTube page and clicking on the VSOF Gilded server link in the upper right-hand corner of the banner. And that link is also in all of the show notes for all of the classes on YouTube and on Odyssey. And also, we are now on Rumble, and you can also find the link on our Gab group, which is Gab group 30721. And tonight we are streaming on Odyssey, as we do every other Wednesday night and every other Saturday night. And I will bring up the link for the Mega. I'll repost it again. These are the documents that we were going to cover tonight. And with that, since Viper's here, I will basically just pass the mic to him and let him tell you the story, because he informed me just today that his cases were dismissed, and this is something that he had done more or less on his own. Yes, we put together the travel binder, but it wasn't even really me that put it together. Mumbles and a few other people really did do most of the work on the right to travel binder, which was a binder that was always meant to basically be kept in your car, so that if a land pirate ever does pull you over, basically the first thing you do is you hand him the entire 3-ring binder, and basically you don't expect to get it back. So you're not putting anything in there that has any, say, private documents in it. You're not, I mean, I suppose you could also give him something like the MSO if you had it, but then of course you'd say, hey, and by the way, I want the MSO back. You can keep the binder for your information. Because technically when you do get pulled over, that's basically when court starts. You are immediately negotiating with a corporation that is attempting to contract with you and is attempting to get you to contract with it. And so we covered all that in the travel binder class. And like I said, I put a link to that in the show notes, but again, I can put another link here in, and all the stuff that we covered in that class is in that mega folder. And to pull up the mega folder, I will show you what is in it. So this is I'm going to switch these around here. So this is what was in the mega folder for that class. So what we did was we had a list of various different things that we put together. So the first thing is a list of what goes into and onto your right to travel binder. So this information is basically a list of what is kind of below here. And then there's a picture. This is just a picture that you can put on the front of the binder. Then there's Bond versus US, Hatfield versus London. There's a Washington case. And then the interesting things are the Arizona senator letter, the Wayne Stump letter that he wrote to, Director, Department of Public Safety. That's who it was to. So this is the Wayne Stump letter. If nobody's seen it, obviously you can go onto the mega folder and download it. Let me blow it up for anybody that might be watching this later, so it's clear as to what's on here. And so anyway, what Viper did was he gave this along with the other things that are in the folder and basically served it onto the court. But I will let him tell the rest of the story. But just in short here, what this letter says is that it's an Arizona senator telling the Department of Public Safety, has come to my attention that numerous individuals in our state have rescinded all of their contracts with the United States federal government and the state of Arizona and each of its political subdivisions, establishing themselves as free men under the organic national constitution of the Republic of the United States of America. Consequently, they may be driving, that should really say traveling, but they may be driving without auto registration, driver's license, or any other evidence of contract. Contract, right? It's all about contract and consent. Because many law enforcement personnel may be unaware of the contractual nature of auto registration and driver's licenses, it is conceivable that this situation may lead to confrontation between these individuals and law enforcement personnel. So basically, if any time this happens, please tell me. Sincerely, Senator Wayne Stump. So that's just the premise of what we are beginning to talk about here tonight. And now I will just shut up and let Viper tell his story. So take it away, my friend.
Okay. So this is an amazing experience for me personally because where to start? I'll just start from the beginning. Okay, so I'm in Florida, and
Oops, you're not coming through anymore. If you're still talking, we can't hear you. There's something else I'm going to put in the chat too. This was the list of the information that was supposed to go, or is supposed to go into travel binder. And basically what Viper did, or what he told me did, was that he put not all of this information, because Viper has not yet done his doc set. So what he did was he just basically put the information that's in the travel folder itself. But this is his timeline, and of which I recall I did redact as far as not putting his name in here. Yeah. Okay. So this is Viper's timeline. And again, whenever someone works on a case, and remember, we don't solve people's cases here at the VSOF. What we do is we teach people how to work their own cases. And then we say, okay, what'd you do? All right. What do they say? Okay. Well, then here's some more options about what you can do. So it's a back and forth. So we do not represent anyone nor their estate here at the VSOF. We just kind of help people get their stuff together so they can do their own case. And so this timeline in the inferior court and this is Viper's timeline. How I tell people to do this is up in my little post from the Desk of Zen. So under this right here where I talk about you need to create a timeline of events of what you work on. So when I tell people, look, if you're going to ask for help, this is something that you absolutely have to put together. So everyone needs to learn how to make and keep a timeline of events regarding their own issues and tasks. Regarding a timeline of events for each task that you are working on is now a requirement from any and all who wish for me to help them regarding any issue, task, case, doc set, process, notice, procedure, or filing of any kind. And technically, the only people that I do help are either VSOF members or lifetime members. I really don't help anyone else with their case. And again, I don't do other people's cases. I just say, look, here's the templates we have. You fill them out. I'll be happy to basically proofread them at a later date. But even that time, if someone asks me for that time, there's a fee for that amount of time. And I usually ask about 3 rounds of silver per hour because, again, there was a time, long time ago, and CLF3 can vouch for this. There was a time that he and I were doing cases all day long, every week, and no one ever paid us anything. And if we won, they said, great, thank you, have a nice day. And if they lost, they basically threw hissy fits and got all pissed off at us. So we don't do that anymore. Instead, what we do is we teach people how to run their own cases. But anyway, so creating the timeline is the first thing you have to do. So name of the suit, project, procedure that the timeline is being created to keep track of in bold and centered in the middle of the page. And do not make one massive timeline for all your actions, everything you do, because to be specific and make many of them and keep track of them separate in each folder. Meaning if you have separate cases or if you have separate things that are going on, obviously don't just make one timeline or else that's basically a journal entry instead of a timeline. And then start the list of all your actions in the first document, meaning that the last thing should be that thing you did regarding the matter at the top of the Word document, meaning not the bottom. So every time you add something to your timeline, you're putting it at the top of the document, not the bottom. So number 1 is literally the last thing you did. And then the first thing you did would be at the bottom of the document, right? And then make sure in each entry of your timeline, start with a date of when you accomplished the same, served such and such on whatever county recorder, blah, blah, blah. Under each entry, if you need to make a separate indent for specific matters or occurrences, then do it. Meaning like, okay, number 1, the clerk of the court did not want to accept service. So the process server left the documents on the front of the desk and stated to them, you have been served, and then proceeded to walk out of the office. Little notes like this are important because they then teach the next person that comes after you what happened. Because if you don't know and you leave these little important details out, a lot of these little important details are what literally change things to your favor a lot of the time. So make sure that you add them, put them in your timelines. If you have a date that you need to count down, then make that entry of the date in another color, meaning in 30 days, the inferior court will be in default of the notices mailed to them by green card on this date, tracking number, yada, yada, whatever. So if you're counting down a date, make sure that you set that in a different color to make yourself and give yourself a notice to say, hey, I have to pay attention to this. I have to watch this on the calendar. So I know that when they're in default or whatever. And then if you've had contact, or make contact with me or talk to somebody else, say, I spoke to Zen about this matter, such and such, and I accomplished on whatever date, right? Okay, so that's the basis of creating a timeline. So when we go and we talk about the timeline, then this is what your timeline should look like in a sense, in a nutshell. And Viper kind of threw this together quickly tonight as the rest of it to make sure that I had it for what we were doing. Now his is backwards. So his starts all the way back here in September, the 15th of September, 2022, received infractions. So
You hear me right?
Yep. All right. So go ahead. And I'll just kind of follow along the timeline as you talk.
Okay, so what you guys didn't hear, having worked in life safety, I was getting up at 4 o'clock plus in the morning, and I was working in 100+ degree in Florida. Long story short, I fell asleep at the wheel from exhaustion from working, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, working high temperatures, and I rear-ended a police SUV. So obviously, if anybody's ever experienced, an accident that's enough to freak anybody out. Well, here's my story related to this, based on my time listening to Zen's different presentations over the course of it's been over a year. I became very pissed off. I'll just say that. Here I am. I'm driving home from work, or I should say, I'm traveling home from work because I'm not engaged in commerce on the road in Florida. So
Well, until you tried to pick
I'm
up the cop
traveling.
and take him with you.
Exactly. So um, I wake up and I with this jolt, and I look up and I'm like, "Oh, your worst possible nightmare." Here I am because of all the anger that I had had, and I just didn't want to give any more money away to this fraud that I learned about. I was so pissed. So I don't have registration, and I don't have insurance on my own car, and I'm pissed. And then all of a sudden, I've crashed into the back of a police SUV, and I'm like, oh my god, my life is over. I'm just at my wits end on oh what the hell am I gonna do? My car is it's all fucked up. The front it's still drivable, but there's hood damage and front end damage and stuff, but it's still drivable. But so I back up and I pull over to the side and off the road, and he pulls in behind me, and thus begins the whole rest of the evening. And oh my god, I'm mortified. I'm embarrassed. Yeah, yes, Mr. Hoodie, I hit a SUV cruiser. I fell asleep and hit him probably about 20, 25 miles an hour. And I was so embarrassed. Oh my god, I wanted to crawl in a hole, and I was not even a mile from my house. I was almost home, but I was just so exhausted. Okay, so that's the background for what took place leading forward. Thing here in this particular state is they have what's called community officers. They're civilians. Basically, what they do is for since situations like this. So if a cop comes up and he has to deal with an accident scene, he fills out all the paperwork and yada yada yada. So what happens when a cop hits a car or a car hits a cop? They get a third party mediator involved, a liaison, if you will, so that there's no impropriety, perception of impropriety, or whatever. Okay, so this lady is this mediator. community service civilian agent. And so I honestly, I did not have any documents with me during the time. I had not gotten to the point where I printed out all of the VSOF travel binder documents. That was totally in my radar to do. I just had not gotten to it yet. So, it's better. So, in the process of waiting an hour, give or take, finally the civilian person shows up on scene, and I knew, oh shit, I'm fucked because I didn't have insurance and I didn't have a current registration because I wasn't going to give them any more fucking money. I was like, these people are thieves. That's all they're doing, and a lot of the people that work for these organizations don't even realize that they're participating in this theft. So anyway, the cop, he's like, he before the community service agent got there, the cop is asking like, okay, let me see your license, insurance, and proof of registration, or proof of insurance and registration. Well, I was basically playing like, oh my god, I can't believe I hit you. I'm just trying to stall. That's all. I'm like freaking out in my mind. I'm like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? Like this guy, he goes back into his truck, and there's like probably five other police vehicles that show up, and finally the community officer gets there, and I didn't have any of the stuff. But while I was waiting for the community officer to get there, I'm thinking, okay, I don't have my packet, but there's one thing above all else that I can show this community officer what the hell is going on so that they can reconsider what they're actually going to do. So I got the Wayne Stump letter on my phone, waiting to show this person who knew they were going to take information. Let me see your license, registration, yada, yada, yada. Well, I didn't have any of that except for my driver's license, which the cop gave to her. Okay. So at this point, I hand her my phone. I say, I need to show you this, which is the Wayne Stump letter. And she's like, so she starts reading it. And this leads to something else that was extremely important, which I hadn't got to yet in the court case, but this was really relevant because she started reading it. She read it in full because it's only one page. And she says, I don't know what this is. I've never seen this before. And she's on video. And I'm like, this is going to come in handy. She reads the letter, hands me back my phone, and goes off and starts filling out her paperwork. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know how that worked out or not, but I'm thinking, boy, I sure hope that this whole situation with everything that I've learned from Zen and all these documents pans out. Okay, so fast forward, she comes back and she's in a raincoat, and there's another cop beside her, like he's doing security and like a third party thing. And she basically comes up to the car door where I'm sitting in my vehicle, and she hands me the citations that I need to sign. And so I sign them, and then she leaves me a copy with them that she takes off, and that was the end of the scene.
I just want to make a point here. Whenever they hand you something to sign, that's where they're trying to get you into contract. They're trying to get you to agree on the side of the road to submit to the jurisdiction of the inferior court. So what you want to do, and if they're going to threaten you with arrest, like they either say, sign this or we're going to arrest you. Okay, fine. What you do is you sign it under duress. You write under duress above your signature. And if they get pissy with that and they say, you can't sign it that way, well, then just put V, capital V, period, C, period. So capital V, period, V as in Victor, capital C, period, C as in cat. And then you can put it in brackets, or you can put like a little circle around it. You don't have to, whatever. But just V dot C dot. What that stands for is V coacutus in Latin, and it means the same thing. V coacutus means under duress in Latin. And it's just as good, I mean, as far as the court's concerned, regarding contractual issues, but they won't know any better. But if you can not sign it at all and say, I do not wish to enter into any contracts with the corporate state today, thank you very much, you can say that. But if they threaten you with jail, well, then go ahead and sign it, but sign it under duress. So I just wanted to add that little part. So, okay, go ahead, Viper, continue. So you sign the ticket and then... Yes, there's also the 3-day right of rescission as
Okay,
well.
that's good to
That's a
know.
good
I
point.
did not know that because I haven't listened to all your classes, but that
Yeah, Chrissy just put something in the chat. She's right. You can sign it and then you can send it back and say, no, I've rescind this signature under the 3-day right of rescission. You can do that as well if they, are really threatening you with jail. So, but okay. So go ahead.
Okay, so at this point, I've got the three different tickets. Okay, so I've got no insurance, I've got a no registration, or my registration is expired because I didn't want to give these motherfuckers any more money. I'm like, they're committing treason. I don't want to give them any more.
Well, they're not exactly committing treason. What they're doing is they're saying, hey, you entered into a contract at some point. But usually most of these contracts that we enter into, we do so before we've come of full age anyway, because you got to remember that the driver's license contract is signed when we're all minors. So in a
Right,
weird sense, technically, the original contract isn't even valid. And that's not the only reason why the first contract isn't, meaning the driver's license, isn't valid either. I mean, the other reason is because you exchanged Federal Reserve notes for the quote unquote license, and Federal Reserve notes have no consideration at law, which was, of course, the Jerome Daly case, the Credit River decision in 60
right.
whatever 60 whatever it was, whatever year that was, 67, I think, maybe 68. So even the original contract really isn't valid. However, when you're dealing with the lowest level of the idiot machine, they're not going to know anything about that. They're certainly not going to know anything about the Wayne Stump letter. Some of them, depending on who you run into, like if you run into a sheriff or a sheriff's deputy that's been there for a long time, they will know that everything is contractual. But your average run of the mill city police officer is not going to have the slightest idea what the hell you're talking about. But
Oh yeah,
it's kind of irrelevant because it is important to make sure that you show them all of this information on the side of the road that they have, and that is recorded, which you made a point that yes, they do have to have their little body cam things going on. And even if it's just their dash cam where you show them something on your phone and they're sitting there and they're on their dash cam, it appears as though they're reading it, you can at least say at some point in time in a motion to dismiss and say, hey, look, I gave notice to you that I had the right to travel. Now, yes, you have the right to travel. No, you do not have to have a registration or proof insurance. And particularly if you do own the vehicle, meaning if you have the manufacturer's certificate of origin, then you don't have to worry about the registration part either. However, the last citation you got, the careless driving, again, that's a Roman civil law thing. Yes, it's a commerce thing because it says careless driving, but actually causing damage, harm, loss, or injury to someone, no matter what you're doing, regardless of being on the road or not, that is a crime under the common law. But they don't prosecute it at law. They always prosecute it in equity. But so anyway, I just wanted to state that for everybody, just to clear that up.
yeah. That was part of this whole thing that I wasn't really sure on how that particular component was going to go with this, because I'm like, okay, I've caused damage, but who is the victim?
Right.
Because it's not the police officer's SUV, it's the state's. And is the state going to be a person? Are they the victim? So it raised a whole bunch of questions, and I'm like, okay, I don't know, but I've got my own car problems at this point. So let me fast forward. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, I've read the ticket, or these tickets, and I've got 30 days to respond. What do I do? But I eventually reached out. I asked for assistance, but I had 30 days to basically respond. And as the time frame came, I learned that okay, well, I can take certain motions. So this is where I don't know if you want to put the timeline in the chat there so that people can read it.
The timeline is in the chat. I also have it on my screen at the same time, so I'm running through the timeline as you're talking. So if you're reading it or you're looking at it, go ahead and I'll just follow along with what you gave me today. But yeah, so I added it to the I added it to chat as well in case anybody wants to just directly download it.
So I got to remember that I have to respond within 30 days, or to basically say what I'm going to do or what my intent, or they're going to rule against me. Okay, so I reached out to this attorney, their law.
And that would be the one that you have in the timeline here, this legal assistant, attorney, whatever.
So I reach out to this attorney, the secretary, and basically find out that, and I explained to her kind of what the things that I had learned, and she totally agreed with me. She's like, yeah, that's pretty much the case. And so she looked up the court situation, because what had happened is I got contacted by my employer saying, hey, you've got some tickets that they're going to suspend your license, or you need to take care of this. And I'm like, freaking out. I'm like, holy shit, my employer knows, like, okay, I need to have a driver's license to drive, regardless of not working, earning money on the road through my employer, but they expect me to have a clean record. So I'm like, okay, so as soon as I got that, I contact this law firm, and they basically said that we charge $600 for a retainer. This is yada yada yada. And they pulled up the record. Now, what I had found out from this representative there is they said, yeah, it looks like your license is not suspended. Somebody paid your fines. Okay, so I didn't even know that there was fines that were imposed on my record, or on these citations. And so I'm like, okay, so she pulls it up, and these $23 fines had been paid by the court, or dismissed by the court, whatever, however you want to look at that. I think they can write off these charges at a whim.
Well, now just to make sure, and just to be clear here, we're talking about the same charges of the same day, or something different.
Oh, it's before that. It's back in September, October timeframe. So they had charged these, whatever these fees are, and they were like $23 filing fees or whatever. So 23 times 3, 69 or whatever it is. And those were reversed. So those 30, whatever the charge was, those were reversed. So here's what I did within this 30-day window. What I did is I literally went over to Office Depot, opened up Microsoft Word, and I downloaded from the VSOF the travel document binder that I had wanted to, or fully intended on printing out to carry with me in the car. Okay. Now, I have not done my VSOF doc set. I haven't done it yet. So I print all these out, and then something else that I had seen on a video, I'm like, okay, I need to add this to it. Now, Zen, if you want to pull up the letter, the cover letter. So so I printed out all this stuff, printed out this document that Zen has on the screen right now. Okay. So I put all 3 tickets, and then I said, basically, I do not accept your offer of contract. What you are doing is a violation of U.S. law, Title 18, Sections 241 and 242, to deprive me of my rights under the color of law. So what I did, after I printed all that out, within the time frame of the 30 days, I went to the circuit court, took a number, waited, was called to desk number 4 or whatever it was, and I had this packet all printed out, and I walked up there, and she says, how am I going to help you? And I'm not even making this up, I literally said, you are served. And I laid the documents right there. I handed it to her. I turned around and I walked out. That was my interaction in a totality. Now, after that, I was like, okay, and my heart is racing. I'm like, oh God, I hope this pays off. I hope this pays off. Because I'm literally going off of all the classes that I've listened to Zen talk about, and all these other things that I learned. I'm like, all right, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and see if this actually pays off. And sure as shit, it totally did. Okay, so after that, I'm waiting to get something in the mail, something. So fast forward, now I get an email from my one of the people at work saying, hey, because I have to drive a truck on occasion for, going around to do what I do. And they're like, hey, you got this situation going on with your tickets. And so at that point in November, I reach out to this attorney or this law firm. That's where on the 30th, I highlight that component, and I find out that's where those charges were reversed. I'm like, oh my God, this is actually happening. They're having to deal with the ramifications of all these court history cases, of all the Supreme Court rulings that are in this travel binder. And I'm like, this is actually working in my favor, and my heart's just racing. And so I go, okay, so what's the next step? And they set the court date for February 6th, and I'm like, okay, so what do I need to do? And I'd reached out and like trying to figure out. And this is where Zen actually presented these options on what course of action are most likely to succeed in your favor, and the steps that you need to take, and the courses that you should take the time to go through and study. Okay, so I chose one of those four. I chose number 4. And so I start going through the lessons. I start going through the videos and the documents that are referenced and all this other stuff. And I'm not even halfway through it, because it's just an ocean of information that is at times completely overwhelming. I'm like, oh my God, this you you have to devote your life to this, because it's overwhelming, and you want to have you want to be able to have a semblance of some sort of life. But anyway, so I'm going through this stuff, and I'm taking the key pieces of information that are being presented within this just incredible body of knowledge. It's absolutely priceless. Yeah, the right to travel. That all that information in that series is like I had no idea. This is absolutely amazing. So I pull up that stuff, and I'm like, okay, what are my steps or my courses of action? Okay, so they had set the court date to February 6th, which was, well, today's Wednesday the 8th, so Monday. Monday was when this court case was going to happen. And so I had not had the time, based on a variety of circumstances, to fully study and know what to file and what steps to take. And I'm like, okay.
And what I did, I just posted into chat the
I
class,
can hear you.
Here?
Yeah, I can hear you.
the class that he was just talking about, which was the options after getting a traffic ticket.
Okay, so I'm like, what are my courses of action? Because the deadline for on Monday was coming, and I hadn't filed anything, and I hadn't done anything, and I'm starting to freak out, thinking, okay, I'm going to go into this hearing, which is like they do a video hearing, and I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to do? I've not filed anything. I don't know what to do, what course of action to take. And so Zen's like, okay, just file a motion of continuance. I'm like, okay. So what I did is on Thursday, I put together the paperwork, and on Thursday evening, I actually emailed a motion for continuance to the responsible party. And so I was basically, yes, CJ, buy some time. That's what I was trying to do, is buy some time. And so what I did, and I think Zen might have the document that I actually filed. I filed a motion for continuance on the 3rd. The date was on the 3rd. I actually started on the 2nd. They want, if you call and you call them up on the phone, and they intimidate you, which it just pisses me off. They intimidate you by saying you have to do this X, Y, and Z. No, you don't. That's just them trying to intimidate you. They wanted me to have this done 10 days prior so they can modify their court hearing. And no, that's not the case. So what I did was, on the 2nd, I sent an email to say, hey, I've got a family emergency, a family medical emergency, whatever I could do to, like, I'm like freaking out. I don't know what to say. So I'm like, okay, I've got to go into a remote area of the United States that doesn't have internet connectivity, just so I can, like, not show up on Monday morning because I'm not prepared, because I haven't filed whatever paperwork in other motions that I need to do. So I sent that, and then on a Friday at some point I created the actual motion for continuance and actually went into the circuit court and filed that directly. They scanned it into their system, and I'm like, so when you scan this, does it notify like all parties involved? And she's like, yep, it notifies everybody that's involved in this case immediately. Okay, and I'm thinking, well, that's good. It's certainly not within the 10 days that they're asking for, which I don't know if that's like a law or anything. Maybe Zen can comment on that. But so I had done legally what I needed to do, and Zen made a really good point in these classes that he's talking about, where it's basically a tennis match. It's a ping pong match, where okay, you're moving you're moving the court. It's like you're playing ping pong. You set the thing in motion, and it's totally intimidating for people that have never done it, but when you get into it, you're like, oh, this is stupid easy. Like I'm just okay. I need to follow this guideline or this rule or whatever.
What I was going to say was that all of these Roman civil law courts, they all have their own set of rules. So they follow a set of rules and procedure, and those rules and procedure are set down in their statutes. And there's different rules for civil procedure than for what they consider traffic, which is quasi-criminal. Well, if you actually look up the term quasi-criminal is actually what's called a bastardly proceeding, which is kind of funny that they use the word bastard, because that's kind of one of the presumptions they're using against us, that we don't have the rights under common law because we're all considered bastards because of how the birth certificate's done. But I don't want to digress here. But the point is that they all have their own rules, and yeah, if you just follow the rules, or put it this way, if you file something that does not follow the rules, they're not going to pay any attention to it. But if you follow the rules of Roman civil law court procedure, and I highly suggest that everybody get the jurisdictionary course, because the jurisdictionary course from Dr. Graves teaches you how to go through these equity procedures, equity courts, if you want to. And that was something that we covered in the class, where your options after getting a traffic ticket. Because I basically did this specific class for Viper because he wasn't exactly sure what he wanted to do. And I'm like, well, do you even know what your options are? And he's like, not really. And I go, okay, fine. I'll just do a class on it. So I did a complete class to show people what the options are in when you get a traffic ticket. And it's a document that I created. And if you guys want, you can obviously pull this up and then look at the class itself. But I created a handout for it. And if you want the handouts for this class, there's a mega link, obviously, for that class as well. And I can put that in the chat too. And you can download and take a look at what that looks like, what these options are, the plan of attack. And so we did that, went through it, and then he said, okay, well, I want to do, what's the options now? And I said, well, basically all you can do is motion for continuance at this point if you want to continue to move along in their little private for-profit court that's not a court of record, meaning that you're going to continue to do it under Roman civil law and not at law, meaning you're not actually suing them at law and saying, hey, you trespassed upon my substantive rights and this is what you're going to owe me. So it was this last minute kind of thing. And this is the thing. The one thing that I always tell everybody is that Noah built the ark before the flood, not after, right? So you want to get all this stuff and get all your ducks in a row, learn these things, learn what you're doing before anything comes along or before you decide to rear end a police cruiser. So in other words, you should go through and get this stuff in your head and learn what you're doing before you go do that. Or else you're kind of going to run into all kinds of trouble, both figuratively and if you do that literally. And so that's why I put these classes together. So the two links of the main classes, like I said, are the travel binder folder, which is what obviously Viper served on them right in the beginning. So he went down and he just served them the travel binder folder, which contained the Wayne Stump letter and the other things that are in the travel binder folder, and also the list of law, which I just had up and was scrolling through. What a driver is, what a motor vehicle is, traffic, so on and so forth. And this document was something that Mumbles actually put together for the live class that we did back last year in September. And so what he did was he put all that together, and this is what he served on the court. Now, technically, and this is something else too, technically you cannot serve your own documents. Technically, you're supposed to have somebody else who's come of full age walk in there and serve them. They can be a process server. So anyone over the age of 18 can be a process server. Technically, you're not allowed to serve your own documents, but he did what he did anyway. And basically what he did in doing so, was kind of just throwing it in their face and saying, here, you're served, is that he showed them all of this information. He also, in the aspect of the letter, he's basically saying to them, look, I can take this to an 18 USC 241 and 242 issue, a federal issue under Title 18, and go after you. So, and this is what I think personally happened. I think because he hit him with all of this and this letter, and then waited until the last damn second to then say, oh, yeah, and by the way, I need a motion for continuance, all the way here, literally like 3 days before the court case was going to take place. I think that scared the shit out of him, because they thought that what he was going to do was file for a federal suit in federal court under Title 18 and go after him like this. And that's what he needed more time to do. At least that's what it would have looked like if I were the one receiving this. I would have thought to myself, oh, what he's doing is he needs some more time to put the federal suit together because he's going after us. Okay, fuck this. We're out of here. That's what I think happened. I think. Or maybe at the same time, it was just all the rest of the information that is clearly in the right to travel folder that made them aware of the fact that, okay, we really don't want to mess with this guy, because not only does he have all this information, it's all correct, and he's got Supreme Court cases, and the Wayne Stump letter might have freaked him out too. Who knows? But there's also the U.S. Supreme Court rulings on the right to travel. This is something else that Mumbles put together that's also in there. So all that put together, long story short, he went in there, scared the crap out of him, dropped all this stuff on him, and then, as it shows in the timeline, at the end, they basically just dismissed everything. So all three of those cases that were up prior, then, meaning these three, were then all completely dismissed. And you found that out what? Today, right? You literally told me that today, that you looked them up and they were all dismissed.
Yeah, because I didn't look at my email for the last couple of days. I actually received the email on the 7th, the day after the hearing, because what I had done is filed the motion of continuance and got the response on the 7th. So I didn't look up my driver's license or anything. I didn't know how to look up the aftermath of the court, and so they dismissed on the 6th. I didn't know where to go look for that, and I got the email on the 7th. I discovered it today because I was trying to file for what was it, motion to set hearing today, and I didn't make it into the court. So I'm like, shit, I missed the deadline because they closed at 4 o'clock. So I was literally going to go online and do the same filing that I did before, which was to file the motion for continuance, which I did on Friday online. There's a portal you can use to file documents, so if you can't make it into court, you can still use that. It's the same thing. So I was trying to beat the deadline of 4 o'clock, and I didn't make it, so I started to do that. Well, come to find out, when I looked up information in my email, I was like, hey, there's a new email from them, like, hey, your case has been dismissed. Do you still want to file this motion? I'm like, what? What? Oh my God. And I'm like, holy shit, it worked. So I'm literally baffled at how this whole thing unfolded. And I think you're absolutely right, Zen. I think they saw the steps that I was pursuing to basically hold them accountable for treason, and they're like, "We're out. We don't want a part of this." But without being in a room to talk to these people, who knows what the hell they did? But the gravity of just the legal framework of all of the Supreme Court and the history of law and the maxims of law that are within all of these docs that I filed, they just did not want to have anything to. They didn't want to touch it, and I can see why. It's a numbers game for them, because here they have to go. They have to do this back and forth with me, who's going to fight them. Why bother? Because we got 1,000 other people lined up behind you that are going to give us their money. Screw you, you're out. We're just going to play the numbers game. That's all they're doing. So they're not going to fight if they don't have to. They're going to see this. They're not stupid.
Yeah, and particularly
and
they
know
don't
the
really
game.
want to fight in federal court either, as CLF3 just put in a chat. That's correct. If you're in state court quoting them USC, it doesn't mean dick unless you're moving to drag them into federal court about something. And he's right, because it doesn't make any difference to bring up USC, federal law, in a state court unless that is your intention. And that letter clearly stated that that was your intention, that you were going to move it and make it a federal issue. So I completely agree with what he said, because that's what you did. You set them up in a way where it said, I'm taking this straight to federal court, fuckers. And here's the thing. Most people don't realize about 42 issues, or when people do this, and they call it a 42 suit, but it's 18 USC 242. Okay, so what a lot of people don't realize about these kinds of federal suits is that like 90% of them are settled out of court by the state minions. They don't want anything to do with it because they know that this is exactly what they're doing. If two or more persons go in disguise on the highway or in whatever premise of another with intent to prevent or hinder his free exercise or enjoyment of any right, privilege so secured, well, that's exactly what they're doing. And they know that. So, our mentor, and our meaning CLF3 and I, mentor Steve Carr, he was doing some research and had been doing some research and been working with some people who kind of do this all the time, that automatically take it into federal court at like every traffic issue. They just do this and it just automatically goes away. And I hadn't mentioned that to you because I didn't want to get your hopes up, because sometimes they pay attention to this, sometimes they don't. But clearly this time they were like, yep, fuck that, we're out of here. And that was the end of it. So, yeah. So good job. I mean, you were praising me quite a bit today about what I've taught or what I gave you. But again, I didn't put the travel document stuff together. That was more or less Mumbles that did that. I just did a couple classes on it to give it to you guys so that you knew where to find it. But it's you that has to act. You're the one that has to do these things like Viper did, because nothing's going to go away on its own. You have to take action. And he took action on the side of the road. He took action in going and giving the court, technically not serving, but in a sense, serving the court with the notice letter saying, hey, notice this, guys. This is what I'm going to be doing. Gives them all the information that all has to deal with federal issues, particularly the Supreme Court rulings on the right to travel, and the Amjur statements, and the Wayne Stump letter. Scares the crap out of them that way. And Bond versus U.S. is also Supreme Court as well. Scares the crap out of them with all that regarding the 10th Amendment issue with Bond. Well, why do they want to even try to move forward with that? It's easier for them to just completely dump it, even though he completely fucking rear-ended a state cruiser and probably demolished it. Now, that's saying something. I've never seen anybody get out of something where you actually have literally destroyed state property and they completely dismissed it. But good job. So there we go. So would anyone like to comment or question about any part of this story, considering we have Viper on the call at the moment ready to answer? Or is there anything that anybody else would like to add?
Yeah, so it's not just the numbers game. They didn't want to risk a federal holding that would affirm all of that stuff, because that would be in effect, a court hearing that basically, or a federal holding that basically declares all of the state level traffic shit unconstitutional.
Oh, that's a good point. Right. And I mean, not to mention as well that what TJ realized, and he showed me in some of his motions, which I would have given to Viper if this had gone any further, was that he's got a motion. I think he calls it his Perosa motion. And what it shows is that none of the state law, the state traffic court laws have ever been properly enacted into law because they don't have a proper enactment clause as per state constitution. And
yeah, I actually started working on that very thing. Those 2 docs that you gave me, I actually finished putting them together to highlight, because I was trying to find the Florida equivalent of the Michigan state clause, and I ended up finding it.
Okay, good. Because that was the next thing we were working on, because we were going to hit them with that and be like, hey, guess what, fuckers? None of your state traffic laws were ever properly enacted. And TJ's never found a state that has enacted them correctly. And it makes sense because, like CLF3 said, they're not constitutional. So that's a problem. And they just don't ever want to go down that road. They're just hoping that everybody acts as a stupid sheep, wanders in there, just moos at them a few times or bahs and gives them their money and walks back out and doesn't know any of this and doesn't fight and doesn't stand under their substantive rights. So,
hey, Zane, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Once you get your status docs completed, and can you just like send them, or if you were ever to be pulled over and then you were to establish your own court, basically have them acknowledge that you have the right to travel, and as a remedy, let them know that you will create your own plate, or they can create one for you for travel, so that you won't continually have to come into their court for this.
You mean getting a ruling that you have the right to travel? Is that what you're talking about? There's been plenty of rulings that state that.
Well, no, just basically having them to acknowledge that, and then requiring them to either acknowledge a plate that you can provide or have them create one for you.
Oh, a license plate. No, because a license plate is something that is prima facie evidence that you are engaged in commerce. So we technically don't need license plates on any property that we hold the MCO for. And if you have a used vehicle, well, then that's a whole nother class that I talked about how we go through the 3-step default process and go at the Secretary of State and say, hey, do you have any interest in this property? And when you basically default them at the end and they say, they don't ever answer, then you make a final default notice. It's basically a notary presentment. Final default notice by notary presentment to the Secretary of State and say, look, you failed to give me any proof that you have any interest in this property. And you've now basically defaulted. And then you take that administrative process, the 3 knocks on the door with the final notice from the notary presentment. Then you go to an equity court and you ask for something called a declaratory judgment. And what a declaratory judgment is all it does is it declares the rights of the parties. So it says, okay, this party has this right, that party has that right, and that's it. There's no money exchanged and no guilt conceded or found when you do a declaratory judgment. And so that's how you would do it. And then you would keep the declaratory judgment in your property, in your car, that says that the state has no interest in it. Anytime that a land pirate would come up and say, license and registration, and say, I don't have any contracts with the corporate state. And guess what? The state has agreed by default that they don't have any interest in this property. What the fuck do you want? I do not want to enter into any contracts with you today. I do not have any valid contracts with the corporate state. Now, where's the emergency? And if you don't have one, I'm leaving. That's the totality of what you actually do in the end, because that's a process that some people actually have done that are on the server. Silence has done it, and a few other people have done it. TJ is actually working on a process to be able to possibly get the manufacturer's certificate of origin, a copy or another one issued like another original manufacturer certificate of origin from.
You might be able to get one issued from the auto manufacturer,
Yeah,
but the one that gets sent to the state is destroyed.
Yeah, but the only auto manufacturer that he's found that keeps them, I think, indefinitely is Dodge. None of the rest of them do, which doesn't surprise me.
What I was kind of thinking, Jen, is more like a diplomatic plate. So this is not like a commercial plate.
I mean, the only thing you're going to get the only time I've ever seen anybody get something close to something like that are the plates that the mob has, because the mob has their own plates, and cops see a mob plate, they don't touch it. But that's the only time I've ever seen an actual state official plate stamped out that they will not touch.
You're going to have to tell me about the mob plate thing. I've never heard of that before.
Oh, yeah. That's Jordan Maxwell talked about that years ago because his family was in the mob. I don't know if it was grandfather, I think it was, who was in the mob and became like a federal judge. And anyway, he knew about all that not a federal judge. I think it was a state judge. And he knew about all of that. And he said that multiple times in his talks. He's like, cops see a mob plate, they will not touch it. But that's the only thing I've seen.
The thing is, I know you go through the paperwork and stuff like that, and you have the declaratory judgment and stuff, but you're going from city to city and maybe even state to state, and you're going to be pulled over multiple times, and you have to go through this so many times. That's all I was thinking. It would be great to have a plate that was more like a diplomatic plate where they could see it, they could see that you're on the do not detain list, and they just leave it open.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. I'm going to work on the do not detain list all this year. That's really basically the single most important thing that I'm focusing on in 2023. And once you're on do not detain, and then you do after you're on the list, and then you go and get some sort of information, say, the state passport or something that actually does reveal that, the license plate thing is a non-issue. It doesn't matter. They can't do anything, particularly if you go through the rest of it and get the declaratory judgment that says that the state doesn't have any interest in your property. But you see, here's the problem. You are, in a sense, stuck in negotiation. Okay. In case you don't know the 5 stages of grief, okay, you're basically stuck in negotiation in your mindset, thinking that these people, these criminal entities, the Khazarian mob, is going to ever give us anything that will help us. It is not going to happen. Full stop. We have to create these things. We have to fix the problem. We have to get around their system by getting on do not detain so that they then stay the hell away from us, so that they know that they have full liability whenever they come up against us. And the only options we can do until we get to that point are doing things like what Viper did, which is saying, hey, no, I'm going to take this into federal jurisdiction and I'm going to say, look, you've deprived me of a substantive right. Now, granted, I get it that Title 18 and 241, 242 are, quote unquote, civil rights. Okay, fine. I get it. But in a sense, you're also stating that, yeah, you're making it a federal issue. And you could, at that same time, say, hey, there's some common law issues here too as well. Like when he stole my car and he had a weapon on the side of his hip. Well, that's armed robbery. And first time offense under common law for thievery is death. And when we start putting our grand juries together, that's a different story because then we are above them. But you really have to get out of the idea that in this like negotiation idea that there's anything that they're ever going to do to make this any easier for us. They will never do that.
Hey, Zen, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So can you address like down at the bottom where it starts off as additionally in the document there? Down at the bottom, so additionally this corporate.
It just says additionally this this is a corporate subsidiary of Orange County as displayed on the business listing website Dun & Bradstreet and is operating as a corporation doing business as a county government. This is fraud. And he said this is fraud. I think you said that this is treason, but I think this is the one you gave me. So I think you said fraud, not treason. But yeah, and it's also what CLF3 just said in here too. It's not only fraud, but it's also impersonating. And then he said insert public official name here. because even I think it was Judge Joe Brown that even got on he was interviewed by some news organization, and he literally told them that they were running things as a private for-profit court. And he said none of these judges are lawfully operating as judges, and he knew it, and he said it right to him. And so you get to the point where, okay, is it treason? Well, they're operating and created their own operating system in 1871 when they did the District of Columbia Act. And what did they do? They took all of the res that was in the trust that was called the Constitution for the United States of America, and they started administering it as a corporation because the trust had been bankrupt. But who bankrupted it? Well, they did. How? Through the Civil War. Well, how did that get started? The Rothschilds. Same way the War of 1812 got started. Rothschilds. What's the problem? The Khazarian mob, always. And so is it treason for them to be continuing a corporation when you're the one that is agreeing to the jurisdiction? And the answer is no, because again, it's all by contract and consent. It's just Walmart pulling you over. That's all it is. But if you're sitting there saying, look, I don't have any contracts with Walmart, and Walmart doesn't own my property, and Walmart doesn't own this road, so what do you want? Right? That's the point. But is it treason when they're operating in Roman civil law as a corporation doing what they're doing? Nah, technically, not really. I mean, is it treason for them to attack us as the sovereignty of the nation? Not technically. It's really what it is war. I mean, it's really
Sedition.
it's sedition. It's war and sedition. I mean, if you really want to get technical with the DoD Law of War Manual, and you really want to go through the DoD Law of War Manual, technically they're acting as spies, in a sense. But you can argue that both ways. But anyway, because that's something that 107's brought up, and a few other people as well. And I've read the sections of the DoD War Manual. It's like, yep, that's what they're doing. So I mean, is it treason? This has been a discussion that I've had with people for decades.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think basically the treason would be against the gold clause, or the Article 1, Section 8, Clause 10, and with making us use third-party money. That'd be treason against the Constitution, not necessarily against the people. But I think the Lieber Code's even treason.
Sure. Yeah. It's all, I mean, if you want to get to the treasonous aspect of calling something treason, I would tend to agree with you. I would call the acts that they have done that are unconstitutional treasonous. Like you mentioned, like the gold confiscation of the executive order in 33 on May 1st, 1933, which I literally have a laminated copy of up on my wall. And yeah, the Lieber Code and all the shit that they did during Reconstruction after the Civil War, the passing of the 14th Amendment, which we know was never properly ratified, that was even brought up as lately as 1960s in Congress, that said, what are we doing? Those things I would definitely say, like the acts themselves, when they did them, I would go more along the lines of calling those things the treasonous actions. Not so much the dumb, land pirate on the side of the street who's enforcing Roman civil law because you entered into a contract.
That was basically the point that I was trying to make with this cover page that was backed up by all this other stuff, but to highlight the two key components. And it was basically I don't want to say I played a bluff, but I played a strong hand in.
Oh no, there was no bluff there. We could have totally done a 42 action. Absolutely. Yeah, I've got plenty of templates for that. We could have just ran right in there. I mean, that's not a bluff.
Absolutely.
So
no, I maybe bluff wasn't the right word, but to highlight and expose them in their face on the gravity of the situation that they have entered into in this situation.
Yeah, if you want to call it something, it'd be more like a head fake or a feint. Meaning like, hey, I'm gonna look like I'm gonna punch you down here, but here's the fist actually coming on the top of your head over here. that was kind of more like the analogy of what you did.
Yeah, exactly. It blew me away to see that email today, and just to encapsulate the overall gravity, the overall power of knowing what you're doing. Even though I don't know, have a deep understanding of everything, like CLF or Zen and some other people that have been doing this far longer than I have, this really encapsulated a lot of just being able to take key components, and we really do have this power. This was invigorating, and just it instilled a level of confidence in myself that I'd never even began to imagine that I could possibly have.
Well, it's
And
good
so
because, and you don't get that
it's
confidence
incredible.
until you actually win. Now, do you? Because you were freaked out for a while.
I was scared. I'm like, I'm gonna go to jail or whatever. But no, like what you pointed out, it's like they're running roughshod, playing on people's ignorance, and they're playing a game.
Yep, that's the thing that you got to learn if you're going to pick this as an option. Because in this class, your options after getting a traffic ticket, I clearly lay out that you have various different options. And the ones that if you want to take the option of being a defendant under Roman civil law, well, then you're going to have to learn how to play that back and forth game with them. Because if you don't, well, then they're gonna have a default judgment against you, and you're automatically going to lose. But what you did in playing the Roman civil law defense game is that you came at them and said, well, I'm looking like I'm playing Roman civil law defense, but what I'm really doing is I'm really doing a Roman civil law attack. And I'm going to show you what my Roman civil law attack is, but I'm not going to give it all to you right now. We'll deal with this in federal court. And that's why I need some more time for a continuance. And that's probably, like I said, what freaked them out, if I had to guess. Because I don't know anybody who gets off of 3 tickets that runs into the back of a cop car. Okay?
Yeah, I was blown away by that. I think you're absolutely right that they saw the plan of attack, and that is exactly what I was planning on doing. Because I told you directly, it's like I want to go after them full on, and they saw that. And I don't think obviously these people are not stupid. I think that other people have tried something similar, and they
Right.
see the writing on the wall, and they're like, we're out. We got 1,000 other people. We're going to make a lot of other money over here. Let's not waste our time.
Yeah, like I said, the times that I've heard of people doing a lot of, or they get really good at doing 42 actions, is that once you get really good at it, you can pretty much knock them over the head every single time. And that's what freaks them out. And by the way, I was just trying to look and see if I had that same class. I don't think I've actually uploaded your options after getting a traffic ticket yet onto YouTube. So it's only going to be on Odyssey. So if anybody wants to watch this, it's only going to be the Odyssey link here that you're going to be able to watch it from, just so that everybody knows. But yeah. So let me open this out. Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to open this out and just look at chat for quick too. Yeah.
It just made me think of what another member had mentioned, then you being like the judge and we're doing role playing, where we're kind of like battling out in court. And I'm very encouraged by this young man's example, because he went out on a limb and he was successful. But if we can role play, or we can have practice sessions and stuff like that, I think we become stronger and more confident in this whole process.
You mean like role playing, like side of the road and in court? Because people have mentioned that to me before, about that's something they'd kind of like to do, which I'm totally down for. I could totally do that. There's a couple of friends of mine that there's some friends of mine that do that on a regular basis. One of the guys' name's Lewis.
You mean mock trials?
I mean,
kind of like mock trials. We could come up with scenarios, and then we would kind of act them out.
Yeah, or even like what to do. Well, yeah, you could either act them out, but again, that would be like, okay, are you going to follow Roman civil law rules? Are we going to do a court of record? Are we going to do a court of record and a Roman civil law court at the same time? And somebody play prosecuting attorney under Roman civil law and somebody play the plaintiff in common law? I mean, there's a lot of ways to play that out. And I'm totally down with doing it, but we'd have to figure out exactly what we were doing each time that we did it and said, okay, this is the parameters of which we're going to do this mock trial.
Yeah, we can kind of mix it up. We could kind of do like Roman civil law, and then we could do one where we're actually bringing the case in circuit court. So we can, kind of
sure.
Do
we can mix it up. Both. Yeah, we can mix it up. And I was just flipping through chat here. Jonathan Todd, you said, don't federal definitions control transportation cases? The answer is yes, they do. Everything that the states do as far as their traffic laws are concerned are all based on the United States Code under the USC, under transportation, all of them.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was just making sure because somebody was saying about using federal codes in court, and I was just bringing up that specifically in traffic court, I'm pretty sure you can get away with it. Maybe not UCC and them admit to it.
No, not UCC. No, United States
transportation.
Yeah, the USC, USC, US Code. The S, not UCC. Right. No, yeah, US Code is all of those definitions are set for those specific reasons.
What the federal traffic codes do is basically set a standard that the states are required to follow because of the Commerce Clause. That's basically what it is, but it's still codified under state law in that state.
Right.
It simply has to comply with the federal law,
or else they don't get federal funding.
The state law has to comply with the federal law.
Yeah.
In that federal state of state.
Yeah, exactly. And or else they don't get the federal money for their DMVs that they put up all around the states. Where do you think that money comes from? Comes from the feds. And so if they're not in compliance with that
money.
And their road grant money.
Are you guys aware of the AAMVA?
AAMVA. No, what does that stand for?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. That's all the over all the traffic courts, over all the BMVs. I've seen people do cease and desists directly to the registered agent for service of process to the AAMVA for all of North America, and had their child support knocked out, gave them their license back. They had too many points and begged them to keep the license.
What is that acronym or what is that set of letters stand for?
American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators.
Oh, I didn't even know something like that existed. Fuck yeah, that would work because then you're doing is you're hitting all of them.
A few nights ago.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I've never heard that. Unless I missed it.
Yeah, my estate holds a CDL, and the trust has a DOT exempt number, and so that's part of what got me into this was signing into my Qualcomm in the semi. I realized it said exempt driver and non-exempt driver, and at the time I was having to sign in as a non-exempt driver, but then I got looking into what the heck is this exempt driver.
Interesting.
So even a CDL truck driver full-time can operate freely with the correct status.
Okay. Based upon that information, do you have anything that was like given as a template to that over umbrella administration?
We did a bunch of digging, and we got their tax forms and all that, and dug into it, and there was just a one-page template, and it was just a basic cease and desist. And he requested a full accounting of all securities created.
Oh shit! No, this is something I found on YouTube. I never sent to you, Zen. Here, you're gonna have to watch this.
You demanded a full accounting. That makes sense too, because that's something you should be doing. The DMV is a private membership association tied to the. Oh yeah, okay. No, that makes perfect sense. So the AAMVA is the attorneys that are running the DMV. Okay, that makes sense.
No, watch that.
It's like the Bar Association for traffic.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's over all these traffic courts and
watch that video. It will blow your mind, dude. I can't believe I didn't pass that on to you.
Yeah, that's who I'm talking about. He talks about the cease and desist in like the last 10 minutes
so
of it.
A good friend a while back mentioned this AAMVA, and I just haven't had time to get to look at it because as of lately, I've been studying positive law, okay? And there's only 27 actual titles of the USC that are positive law. But this evening, Brian Parker had posted the AAMVA again. The gentleman that I heard it from the first time was not Brian Parker. It was another guy out of another group. However, so well, screw it. Let's do a little change of venue, a little change of topic, and go look at what these gentlemen have discovered. You are not going to believe the shit that is in this. So let's just start out first by what the AAMVA is. It's the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. Okay, that's the AAMVA. All right, and everybody I've been talking to, I've been telling them, hey, hit up the DMV and ask them if you're required by law to register your private household consumer good. Of course, the answer is always no. But as I delve into the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administration, one, I just want to tell you from what I'm reading what they actually do, and then we'll get into their bylaws. And this is just so fucking absolutely crazy. All right. The AAMVA's jurisdiction members are comprised of the 50 United States, District of Columbia, 5 U.S. territories, 10 Canadian provinces, and 3 Canadian territories, and the agencies within those jurisdictions who administer and enforce motor vehicle laws. Okay? So again, it's the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. However, they're also in 10 Canadian provinces and 3 Canadian territories.
Well, the reason for that, the reason why they're in 10 Canadian provinces and territories is because Canada isn't a fucking country. It's a corporation, and it has to register with the SCC every year, and it was set up and established by Mackenzie King, who was Rockefeller's attorney. Canada has never been an actual official republic. And yet, there's an invitation in the Articles of Confederation for them to join us anytime that they want to. They've just never done so. But that's why this is what it is right here.
And also in Mexico. Now, I'm just going through their website, and it is absolutely blowing me away. The AAMVA members, again, that's the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, handles driver's license, vehicle registration, and titling, and roadway law enforcement. AAMVA is organized into 4 regions to facilitate the sharing of geographic priorities. See the list of jurisdictions that fall within each region below. Now, as I read this to you, you're just going to think, well, you know, Derek, it's the law. No. This is so much more than what is actual law.
Yeah, it's the administration of infants' estate property is what it is in commerce.
And you have to remember what they're actually governing as commerce. But when you read who is involved in this, it'll blow your mind. Benefits, jurisdictional membership in the AAMVA, and again, that's the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, okay? The benefits are as follows. Access to our online membership, online directory, complimentary subscription to AAMVA's award-winning Move magazine, complimentary subscription to the AAMVA's membership-only weekly e-news, TWIR, the Week in Review, and regional news. It just goes on and on and on. But let me tell you who the four jurisdictions are here. Jurisdiction 1, Connecticut, Delaware, District of Columbia, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, and Labrador, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Nova Scotia, Ontario, Pennsylvania, Prince Edward Island, Quebec, Rhode Island, and Vermont. That's number 1. That's the first jurisdiction. Number 2, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia Islands.
Okay, so anyway, yeah, I get the point, and I'll get to listening to the rest of this. I just don't want to take up anybody else's time, but I'll put the link. Obviously, well, you already put the link in the chat. So let's find, if we can, if you have any other information, or if this guy has any other information about what he served on them, then let's put that together and we can add it to our travel binder. Okay. So
in the last 10 minutes of the video is where he explains that, telling the guy how to do the cease and desist.
the last 10 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. Let me back this out here then. That'd be about here, I guess.
Private intellectual information for which you were not fully disclosed, that they would be selling your information between other entities and giving it to other people and other private for-profit corporations like the police department, sheriff's department, state patrol, DMV, to profit and gain from it. I would let them know immediately to cease and desist and to remove your information from their database. And that if any harm comes to you because they continue to use it, that they're 100% fucking liable for it. All right. Anyway, above this, I will post this fucking website, and you guys can go look at this shit. And I wish I would have looked at it before. Law enforcement. Let's see what this says. Oh, I'm already in the law enforcement. Recognition and verification solution that meet jurisdiction needs.
Okay, he's literally rambling it off. See, all right. This is the kind of thing where, like, if he's got great information, I wish he would, use Mega and put a Mega link and be able to just drop the information instead of trying to ramble off and, somebody literally trying to retype what he's talking about. If anybody knows or has contact with this guy that actually has the documents, try and get a hold of him.
I have all of his Mega stuff. I'm not sure if he has an actual template for a document for it, but I'll check it out. And then the other interesting thing that we found digging into the AAMVA is they call the birth records breeder documents.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, we're considered chattel property from the standpoint that we're even bothering, that anyone goes and enters in or files, or sorry, let me put it this way, that anyone goes and enters into a contract that is the birth certificate contract that the mother and father sign at the foundling hospital, because we're all foundlings. When a foundling is a lost or abandoned child of unknown parentage, the marriage certificate itself is basically a permission to breed, quote unquote, to intermarry, because the first marriage licenses were between white and blacks, and you had to get permission to marry a white or to marry a black, or vice together. And the reason was basically because after the fucking Civil War, what did they do? They made all of the blacks not private property anymore, but they basically made them public property. And then they gave them civil rights instead of having unalienable rights as the rest of us, the white populations, did. And then they brought everybody underneath the auspices of this contract issue with the marriage licenses and the birth certificates and everything else. I mean, you got to remember, this all happened within, about 100 years from, the Civil War time to the 19, because if you're thinking about what happened in 18, okay, so you go to the 1860s. All right, what's 100 years? 1960s, 1860s. They did what they did. They broke the back of the Republic. They did everything that they did. They created the Libra Code, all the Reconstruction Acts, bullshit, all that shit. And then what do you get all the way 100 years later? 1960s. You get all these civil rights activists and all these civil rights stuff because after 100 years, no one says anything about it. No one corrects it. Well, now they can kind of move forward. So what was their agenda in the 1960s? All this civil rights bullshit, right? It's all in your face if you learn history. But okay, great. So if you've got the links for this guy's documents, make sure to go into, and if you're watching my screen right now, make sure to go into the VSOF committee rooms. So if you look in your upper left-hand corner, if you're on a PC, look in the upper left-hand corner. So underneath the main room, there's three groups. There's a state assembly group and then the VSOF committee room. So go to the VSOF committee group room and then go down to the right to travel committee, which is which is committee 18, number 18. And drop all the information that you have regarding this, whatever this guy is talking about, regarding the links for what they've done as far as notice for cease and desist or anything else that they've done to this organization. I'll take a look at it. And the other people that want to help, to get into this committee and help run this committee, please do so, because obviously I'm not running all these committees. Other people can and should step up to start doing this work. So somebody can step up and decide to be the chairman for this committee, the Right to Travel Committee, and start to get these things together so that we can all share them, and so we can all put service on these idiots and tell them to obviously get off our tail. So
there's no committee leader for that right to travel yet?
No. There's only you can put yourself forward. There's only a couple committee leaders. The only ones that have been kind of spoken about or want to be taken. Someone mentioned that they wanted to be chairman for the sovereign living committee room. So basically talking about setting up communities and setting up the capacity to have communities and how to do trade. And so somebody kind of asked for that one. But other than that, no one else has really stepped up to be a chairman for any of these committees. And anybody's welcome to do it. Just read the information in the beginning where it says general overview, the committee sign up, and the information that's there, because that's just kind of like a general overview of how I suggested that we organize the committees. And then obviously the chairman can then go out and collect and do regular posts in main chat, or tell people, hey, I'm the committee chairman of this committee now. I'm looking for people to help me. Let's get this going. Zen suggested that we work on this first, and I have a list of other things that I want to work on regarding, that particular topic, whatever the committee's focused about. And then if you guys have any questions or you want some input or to kind of help out, I got no problem to jump in there, obviously, but I want these committees to be self-run entities. I do not have the time to do all this myself. I'm one guy. And yeah, I know I give you guys a lot, but I can't do everything. So yeah, if you want to put your name in and be the chairperson for Right to Travel, number 18 committee, have at it. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay, yeah, that would probably be the one that I'd be most suited for.
Okay,
all I've
great.
been through with that.
And then, do you want us to take a personality profile before we submit our names for any of the committees?
Well, the personality profile I basically now have put into, I literally wrote that before I did the questionnaire, the way I have it set up now to get into the server. I mean, there might be some people way back in the day that I might have let into the server that didn't actually go through the personality profile already, but pretty much everybody does it by coming into the server already. So no, you don't really have to do, I mean, if you want to do the introvert extrovert one, that one's kind of fun anyway, just to kind of tell everybody else, hey, the chairman's this kind of individual, or they think this way, or this is how they go about, doing things. Because some people are obviously vastly different. Some people are introverts, some extrovert, so on and so forth. And so that one little test is kind of interesting and fun. So if you'd like to do it, I highly suggest that people do it, and then just tell everybody what your results are. But I'm not forcing anybody to do it. No.
So I thought that would be a pretty good thing, because they send you an email on your personality profile, and at least if we can submit them all to our group, to the private members, then we can kind of see what strengths and weaknesses that others have. Yeah,
and CLF3 just posted it. That's where you go and take it. So yeah, I do highly suggest that people take that. And yes, I do highly suggest that you put it into the committee room and tell people. And remember also that every committee room has not only a chat room for flowing chat for discussions and stuff, but it also has a forum room for it too. So you guys can create topics, lock topics down that are specific to whatever you may be talking about. And so you could, create a topic in here, chairman's personality, results are such and such, right? Or the committee's personality results are, and then everybody can put their answers as a reply to that forum post. You guys could do it that way. That'd probably be the easiest way to do it. So is there anything else that anybody would like to talk about or bring up? Because I don't want to cut anybody off in case anybody had any other thoughts or closing ideas for this evening.
When he served that, instead of saying that you're served, would it maybe not have been better to say this is a file on demand?
If he wanted to file it into the court case, but technically it wasn't really something that would have been in accordance with Roman civil law procedures as far as a filing in court goes anyway. So it's probably better that he just said, you've been served, because then the court itself has to take notice of whatever the hell you just dropped on them. And it's going to be given to the district attorney anyway. You know that. And so the district attorney's office is going to look at it and go, oh shit, this is where this guy's going. So, I mean, if you're trying to file something like a motion or a counterclaim or something in a court and they're not doing it, then obviously, saying file this on demand is what you got to do. But that wasn't really his purpose that time. So
you don't think it actually got filed into the case?
it may have. I don't think filing into the case made one iota of difference as to what they did or didn't do. I think they read it and they said, nope, we're out of here.
Right. Okay.
Because it wasn't a motion. I mean, all of this information that's in the mega folder for the right to travel binder class, none of these are court filings. None of these are motions. I mean, there's a lot of court rulings in here, but there's nothing specific in here as a court filing to tell the court, hey, go do something, right? There's nothing in here that's anything like that.
So it's more like a judicial notice or a judicial cognizance.
In a sense, yeah, kind of. I mean, if they were to file it, that would probably be the most logical thing to file it under, but they probably wouldn't do that anyway. They just call it a something that they don't want to have to listen to, and then they dismiss it. But that's not really what he did. He didn't say file on demand. He said you're served. And of course, they didn't know who the hell they were talking to, so they had to use it, or they had to take action upon it as if it was service on the court, which I think they obviously did, because it freaked them out. Because going along with the cover letter, he's saying, hey, look, you're going to get, we're taking this into federal court. And I think that's what freaked them the hell out, because like I said, I don't know anybody that gets 3 traffic tickets dismissed after they smash the back end of a cop car.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, okay, cool. So we got some homework to do. If nobody else has anything else to bring up, then I'd like to thank everybody for showing up for the Vocational Science of Freedom Wednesday night open roundtable. And remember, we're on a 1 week off, 1 week on schedule. So this Saturday will be off, but it'll be next Saturday when we have our next civics and sovereignty class. And I will be continuing the reading from the treatise on American administration, the last class of which is posted onto Odyssey, I believe. So I hope all you guys had a wonderful time showing up and talking. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your information. And thank you very much, Viper, for sharing your story and for educating everybody as to what you did to get rid of these traffic tickets. So until next Saturday, hope you guys have a wonderful time. And obviously, keep your comments in the Gilded server, and we'll get working on those committees. And until then, stay safe and stay sovereign.